one.
So thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to speak, actually, because I asked to. Amir, who's not here, Soltani, he had me come in for the vote for when he was presenting his. and I was going to present one of his movies, and then he lost. And then when I saw that you were going to be showing Wuthering Heights, I knew I wanted to talk about it. Andrew Arnold is one of my favorite directors, period. And so the chance to speak about one of her movies was exciting to me. You know, the obvious thing about this movie is that it's not really like any other literary adaptation that you've seen, certainly not of a period movie. Most period movies, of course, are, you know, very like simple shots, you know, beautiful costumes, that kind of thing. There hasn't really been a film quite like this, and I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be able to find another, you know, adaptation of a British classic with the line, "Fuck you all cunts." And actually that line was pointed out by a lot of critics at the time when it came out. Very unusual, especially for a book that's known to have like really beautiful, ornate dialogue, to have a lot of swearing and just natural, modern kind of speech. Very unusual. But when you look at this movie kind of in the setting of Andrew Arnold's other films, which unfortunately you didn't get to see now, the film actually stands very similar. It's really on par with the rest of her work. So before we talk about this film specifically, I want to talk about Andrea Arnold herself. When she was announced as the director of this movie, it was a bit of a surprise because the producers were originally setting it up to be kind of a prestige movie. Natalie Portman was the first person attached to star in it. There were people like, you know, Michael Fassbender, Gemma Arterton. The directors who were attached, all men at various points, and they'd all done British period pieces, and it was clear that they were trying to set it up as like a fall Oscar season type movie. And of course, this is not, you know, a fall Oscar season type movie, which is a little bit ironic because actually Andrea Arnold is an Oscar winner. She won an award in 2005 for her short film Wasp, which was her third short film. And that was actually her first movie with the cinematographer Robbie Ryan. And since then they've worked together, and I'll talk a bit more about him as well. Her first movie, her first feature-length movie, was a movie called Red Road. It starred Kate Dickie, and it was set up as sort of a Dogma 95 experiment between Lona Scherfig, who did the movie An Education, and Lars von Trier. And the idea was that they were going to have these pre-written characters that the producers came up with, and then they would give three different first-time filmmakers a chance to make their own movie original story using those characters. So Andrea Arnold did the first one. The second one, from what I understand, got made, but I don't think anybody saw it. And then the third movie, I don't think was ever made. But Arnold's movie is very, very good. It's not very easy to find in Canada, but if you can seek it out, you know, online or wherever, Red Road, it's very, very good. And that kind of established her as a filmmaker to watch. Her next movie was a movie that came out in 2009 called Fish Tank, and that one actually did star Michael Fassbender in a supporting role. But that one's a coming-of-age story about a young girl living in a council estate, kind of low-income apartment complex in East London. And in fact, all of Andrea Arnold's films to that point, including her short films, were all about similar subject. You know, the poor people, relatively poor people living in these low-income housing, just really life having beaten them down, and often on top of that, you know, extra, you know, suffering laid on. And, you know, her movies aren't always the most hopeful. But sometimes they are. Fish Tank is actually a very hopeful film by the end. And Fish Tank is probably one of my favorite movies of all time, and I recommend that one that you check out.
We watched it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, so then you know. So one of the things about Andrea Arnold is that she's often talked about in the same space as the British social realist directors. People like Ken Loach, Mike Leigh, John Schlesinger, Lindsay Anderson, movies like Kess. And it's right in some way to talk about her films. You know, they're about similar kinds of people. They deal in class structure. But the biggest difference really is that those previous films tended to be at a bit of a distance. They were almost like documentaries observing these people in the world that they inhabit. And Andrea Arnold's point of view is not really like that at all. She's not so interested in the bigger scope. She's interested in the psychology of the characters. And when you watch her films, you notice kind of the way that it's filmed, lots of close-ups, a lot of kind of point of view perspective shots, very small details that the camera picks up. And she's really kind of placing the camera and the audience in the shoes of the characters so that you can feel really what the characters are going through and trying to empathize with their struggles. You know, this is seen for the people who have seen Fish Tank. You know, one of the things that's pretty amazing about it is that, as disturbing a movie as it is in subject, you know, it's about a man who's seducing a teenage girl, and it's very dark. But because it's filmed from the girl's point of view, there's many points where you see Michael Fassbender, and never mind that he's already an attractive man, but he's never been sexier than in Fish Tank, which makes it all the more disturbing when you're watching it that he is really that seductive. And the same thing comes into play in this film, although maybe a bit less seductive, but being able to really feel what the characters are feeling in a given moment through the camera, through what you're seeing, often becomes quite troubling. You know, we do have to talk about Robbie Ryan, who's our cinematographer, and actually he filmed another movie that's going to be presented here, Ginger and Rosa, also beautifully photographed. His sensibility is a very handheld sensibility. In fact, almost every shot in the movie is filmed by Robbie Ryan with the camera on his shoulder, which, if you know anything about filming, that's a very, very difficult thing to do. You know, so the scenery is a bit shaky sometimes, but it's never like a Paul Greengrass, Jason Bourne kind of thing. It just feels natural. You know, when the characters are running, the camera is chasing them, and you feel that. His collaboration with Andrea Arnold, I think, is part of what makes her film so amazing. That sensibility of his completely matches what she's doing, that point of view, really intimate perspective. One of the other things that's notable about the movie is that it's filmed in a kind of a square 4:3 aspect ratio, which is not common these days. Fish Tank was also shot that way. And part of that, again, is you get these beautiful close-ups. But the other thing that it does, and this relates to the nature that everybody was mentioning, you know, when a movie is shot in widescreen, often you have a lot of nature, a lot of landscape, and the landscape is amazing, and then the characters are just there. But when the characters are filmed in this movie, you see them in the middle of a frame, and the nature surrounds them and encompasses them, and they become a part of the nature. And there's no difference really in the film between the human characters and anything natural in the movie. It's all one intermingled thing, right? As much as the characters sometimes try and be, you know, proper and everything, they're still human beings, they're animals, it's all nature, right? The other thing that it does is, that this filmmaking does, is it highlights really small moments that you remember. So, you know, whether it's the cockroach or the beetle, you see, it's the shot that's maybe like 2 or 3 seconds, and you remember it instantly. One of the best shots in the movie is quite early on when they're riding on the horse, and there's a shot from his point of view with the hair kind of going into the camera, and you get maybe like 2 quick shots of it, but it's instantly memory. It almost feels like 3D, but without glasses. Like you can smell her hair as he's smelling it. I want to talk a little bit about the book, which, first off, I haven't read the book. I wonder actually if people could raise their hands how many of you have read the book, just so I know what I'm up against. Yeah, so I'll actually be curious once we get into a bit of a discussion if you can bring a bit more insight from the book into play on the movie. I considered reading it before this lecture, but like it's a long book and I was busy. I tried reading in high school and it seemed boring, so I put it down. But the novel, it was written by Emily Bronte.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking that it was Emily Bronte.
Yeah, it's Emily.
In English, but we call it in Persian, Quran.
Okay, what does that mean?
I read it 40 years ago.
Is it? It's the same? Okay, because I don't even think wuthering really means anything.
Windy.
Is it? Really? Okay. Okay. Because it's also the name of the estate, right? Wuthering Heights, which isn't mentioned in the movie at all. But so the novel came out in 2 parts, actually, in 1845 and 1846. And of course, at the time, Emily Bronte, you know, being a woman, and her sisters were all writers, they published under men's names. And from my understanding of the book, a lot of it is about this, it kind of has a deep undercurrent of anger and outsiderness and isolation. And it's known as a very dark book, at least in you know, people who know literature. But actually in the public imagination, it's not really known as being that dark, because most of the movie adaptations have been a bit, you know, kind of a bit, not light, you know, they're very dramatic and serious, but, you know, they don't go quite as dark as this, let's say. And one of the darkest is actually the original, or not the original, but one of the first adaptations in 1939, the William Wyler version that you mentioned with Laurence Olivier. And that's actually quite a beautiful film, and also won Best Cinematography Oscar. So, you know, if you can, do watch that film. But that movie is really plays up the romance. And in the public imagination of this story, it's a romance about unrequited love and, oh, how beautiful and how tragic. And, you know, Kate Bush, I think, read the book and then watched that movie and wrote her song. And it's like this, you know, it's like a teenager who doesn't really understand. She was a teenager when she wrote the song, but it's a teenager maybe doesn't understand quite the depth of the book. When Andrea Arnold was asked to come on to this film, she also rewrote the script, and she hadn't read the book since high school. And her memory of it was that it was this dark book, but her immediate memory was that she identified most with Heathcliff. And she's spoken about this several times, that Heathcliff standing in the story as an outsider was the thing that grabbed her the most. And, you know, her being a woman in the British film industry who actually came up, originally she was an actress in children's TV programs in like the 80s and early 90s, and then became a filmmaker after that. And it's not easy, you know, it's not easy especially as a woman filmmaker, and especially in England, where the industry is not built for it. It's built on the names that people know, and then on the TV industry. And so when she came on board this movie, she really wanted to focus in on the idea of being an outsider. And so she made Heathcliff the main character, and everything that you see in the movie is really from Heathcliff's perspective. The most radical thing that Arnold does in the movie, quite obviously, besides the visuals, is that Heathcliff is black. And that's something that, from what I know in the book, is actually quite vague. And here and there he's referred, it's like maybe he's gypsy, dark-skinned, maybe he's from India. It's not entirely clear, but almost none of the film adaptations, it's all been just white guys. Laurence Olivier, people like that. I think Ralph Fiennes was he's in the Juliette Binoche one. So casting Heathcliff as explicitly black says something about what Andrea Arnold is trying to do with the story. Which is to take a subtext about the way that human beings are treated by other human beings, and the way that class and class movement affects a person's psyche. It takes those things and makes them the text, because you can't watch this movie that's set in the 1800s and see this black character and not think like, wow, he's, how does he even survive in this landscape? He's often compared in the movie to other animals, especially dogs, which, that's immediately kind of a racist issue, but it's actually not that bad of a description of the character. He's a very unformed person, and he's prone to temper tantrums right from when he first enters the house. They're trying to help him, and he completely lashes out at them. Heathcliff in this film is a character who has no anchoring in the world, and he's not loved by anybody except for Kathy. And especially the adults around him, the stepbrother, they all treat him quite badly. Even the stepfather who brings him in, who he doesn't treat him badly exactly, but he doesn't treat him well either. He's not really a part of the family. He doesn't completely fit in. When he brings him in, it's done out of an act of religious charity. It's like, what would God have had me do, right? And I'm sure I don't need to go into it with you, the hypocrisies of religious charity. But this film deals a lot in those hypocrisies, and it starts very close to the beginning of the movie when they try and baptize him, or they do baptize Heathcliff. They give him his name, and they dunk his head in the water, and the priest says, from all your filthiness and from all your idols, will you be cleansed? And, of course there's because of the casting, it becomes quite obvious that part of that is to do with his skin color. There's nothing necessarily devilish about this kid other than the way that they view him. And that comes from his dark skin. And his dark skin can't be cleansed away. He's not going to be able to change that. And in fact, at some points he fights back against it, says, I like being dirty, when he's told that he needs to wash up. But he's stuck being black in this world of white people. And that's never mind, even on top of that, the social class structures that dictate everything. It creates a character who's often on the outside looking in. And it's seen most plainly when Kathy starts going to the estate house where Edgar lives. And, at first, Heathcliff goes in, and it's like an alien world. It's so bizarre. And then he spends much of the rest of that part of the movie kind of staring through the window, and he can't ever actually enter that part of society. Kathy can, even though she's low class, right? But he cannot. And, the difference there, I think, is quite clear. And that carries through even later in the movie. He's clearly managed, it's not explained how, but he's clearly managed to come up in the world. But, even still, he doesn't really fit into that house. Doesn't feel like he should be there. Now, the one person who does love him is Kathy. And she loves him. They love each other with kind of it's sort of a childlike innocence at first. She's intrigued by him. He's intrigued by her. They play around together. And what they share is a really primal, so almost animalistic kind of romance, even as children. And there's a really huge degree of sexual energy, and this is something that you talked about, the erotic nature of the movie. Even as young kids, the scenes are highly erotic. And the closing scene of the movie is the flashback to when they're wrestling in the mud. And what else is that other than a kind of a violent sex scene? There's when she's licking his wounds on his back, things like that really signal a burgeoning sexual relationship that never actually comes to fruition. But in the movie, sex is mixed with violence a lot. And this is something that Andrea Arnold has done in almost all of her movies, even including her short films, this sort of thin line between living in a world that's violent, and so you behave violently, but then sex and love are treated the same way. People kind of lashing out, treating each other in some ways quite badly, even though there's kind of a love and a sexual tension underneath that. You get the feeling at some points that the romance is so deep down, so primal, so animalistic, that in fact they just want to consume each other. There's a lot of oral fixation, a lot of shots, including the licking the wounds, but even the way that characters kiss each other and shots of people's mouths and the way that they eat things. There is a sense that, if Heathcliff could eat Kathy up, he might just do that. That's how much the desire is to feel like he has somebody who's there for him. Kathy is more able to separate from that, of course, because she's white, and she's able to separate from him, and she makes the decision at the midway point of the movie to get married to Edgar, and she feels torn about it, but she can't really be with Heathcliff. He's too low. He's lower even than her, which then creates a really extreme situation when Heathcliff comes back, essentially for a kind of revenge. He's not really coming there with any good intent other than to get Edgar out of the way, take Kathy with him, maybe even to hurt Kathy. It's not clear what he feels entirely in that situation, or what he's going to do, how he's going to act out. And you see that even when he goes with Isabel, which he only does to get back at Kathy. But all the time there's this feeling that what he really just wants is to be with Kathy, to even just to have sex with Kathy, which you can see at the end or near the end of the movie. He kind of tries to do, at least with her corpse. It's not entirely clear what's happening in that scene, but I think it's whatever he's doing there is quite troubling. When you're looking at the environment of the film, the kind of murky, misty, grungy look, you said, why was it so gray? Where were the blues? Part of it is that where it takes place in Yorkshire, it's often just very foggy around those hills, so everything kind of looks overcast and gray. But part of it is that the beauty in this environment doesn't come from bright colors, it comes from the small details. So everything is kind of pushed down, very soft, gray, naturalistic. But in those kind of small shots in the details, that's where you find the beauty in the world, and even the suffering. You know, there's a lot of shots of rotting animals and animal bones and things like that. And that's, again, in part to draw this parallel between these characters and their natural surrounding. There's not really, again, a difference between, you know, Heathcliff and one of those dead animals. Certainly not the way that he's treated. The film, in large part, is about this really strong desire to transcend boundaries, this, you know, social boundaries, the social niceties, just the pleasantries that are supposed to accompany everyday living. And it's about this deep need to lash out against that. It's a really angry movie, or at least the characters in it are very angry with their situation. It's about people who are mistreated and dehumanized. And it's a movie about the way that this dehumanization is, you know, shows itself through in violence, and then also, again, in sexuality. And that goes through right down to childhood, all the way through to adulthood. It's a movie about self-destruction. You know, in a lot of ways, the way that Heathcliff behaves, you could look at him and say, oh, why don't you behave a bit better? Maybe then you'd be more accepted. But he can't, because he's already not treated well. So he ends up in this kind of self-destructive spiral, and he pulls everybody around him down with him. These are themes that have all been written about, which I've read about in the novel, but haven't really been present in any other adaptation of the book. But Andrea Arnold, because of where she comes from, because of these, especially these previous movies that she's made, these sort of social realist movies, she sees those buried themes in the novel and brings them out, makes them the most important themes in the story. It's the kind of adaptation, you know, some people described it as boring. I think that maybe that's right. You know, the movie is quite slow in some places. But certainly what I don't think is boring is just the style of the film and how alive it is, and how deeply connected it is to human emotions. And often those emotions are dark and disturbing and sad. But, you know, that many human emotions are. That's kind of the way that life is. And so what essentially Andrea Arnold has done is taken this story that could have just been done, again, like I said, as this prestige Oscar-type movie, and she made an Andrea Arnold movie out of it. She made a movie that's purely her sensibility, that's, you know, eccentric and deeply personal. You kind of feel her presence as a filmmaker in the movie the whole time. I kind of wish more adaptations were as bold as this. It would be nice to see. I think that's about it. I think we can open.